Hey folks, Mr. Justin here with Secret Weapon Miniatures and another 2-minute tutorial for you. This time one of my personal favorite effects. We're going to look at a couple of different ways to get snow. I have here one of the sockets that Roman sculpted for me and I've used in another one of the tutorials. It happened to be sitting around, so we're going to use that today. I also have two types of snow with me. I have the Secret Weapon crushed glass that I'll be using, and I have one of my little portable jars here of the Woodland Scenics polyvinyl snow. Woodland Scenics makes my favorite of the polyvinyl snows. I also have gloss varnish and the realistic water. I will be using the realistic water. You can use the gloss varnish just as readily if you want to. I find that realistic water has a little more flexibility, a little more durability, which is very good for gaming pieces. For display pieces, I can use either one, it doesn't matter. But if I'm going to be handling it, I use my realistic water. So the first thing I'm going to do is put a bit of realistic water in both of these cups. Doesn't take much. We're not going to be doing a lot. I'll use the helps to open your container, Justin. Gonna use the palette knife to scoop up some polyvinyl for this one. Mix that up real quick. And I'm just trying to make a little paste, a little slurry. Mix, 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 mix. What I'm not going to do is add any paint to this. You know, I hear people all the time say, well, add some white paint. You can if you really want to increase the opacity of this, if you really want it to be matte white, yeah, but if that's the case, you can just use sand and white paint as well, paint over it. It's going to lack the luster that you would get from snow, from well-applied model snow. And the reason I'm doing both of these and not just pimping the crushed glass is I want you to see the difference between the two and how I would apply it. Specifically, I use the polyvinyl product for thicker snow, where it's going to be heavier. One of the things that we need to think about when we're modeling something like this is if I've got a figure standing on this base, and I've modeled the snow, say 2 millimeters thick, we're only talking about a few inches of snow. It's going to be translucent, it's going to be slushier. If I'm trying to create a matte snow bank, something that's really deep, really full, in that case, then I need to start with something other than just the snow product. It needs to be clear that this guy's up to his knees in snow. Is the only time we're going to get the matte opacity like that. Alright, so I've got my realistic water here. Close this up so I don't knock it over. And my crushed glass. Handling it carefully. Since I'm using the palette knife, I'm not as worried about having a respirator because I'm not throwing this stuff around, but I will close it up right away. And mix another slurry. Perfect. So even now, pretty much right away, you can see a difference between the two. One is definitely more opaque, the other looks like a pasty sludge, and that's what we're after. So what I'm going to do is take the polyvinyl snow, and I would apply it, not quite as heavy, I would apply it in areas where it's going to stay cooler, sheltered, where it's going to be thicker, and I can come over and I can sprinkle crushed glass over the top of that. I'm not going to do that today because when this is done, I definitely want you to see the difference. And I'm just shaping it into place with my brush. So let's say, you know, just for the sake of a little narrative here, that those bricks, you know, they get a little bit of traffic, maybe not a lot, but people have been walking on them, so it's going to be slushier and we're going to have some runoff. So there is my polyvinyl snow. Just pressing it down a little bit, giving it a little shape. Coming in to mess with focus again. We're going to keep that down instead of making it automatic. There we go. So there's my polyvinyl snow all pressed out. I can also, even now, come in with a bit more of the polyvinyl, get it on my palette knife, sprinkle it in place, just to help sell the idea that it's matte, it's opaque, it's off camera, but I want to get that matte, opaque, white fluffiness for you. And I'll do this with the crushed glass sometimes as well. Just spots where I want it to be, in the case of the crushed glass, a little shinier, In the case of the polyvinyl, a little less. Blow off the excess. Very gently, because I want to keep some of it. And then I'm going to come back with my crushed glass. I'm going to blend the two into each other a bit. So I'm going to push this right up against the other stuff, and I'm going to start pulling it down away from it, just like we've got some runoff. And I'm doing this intentionally thin. I added more realistic water to the crushed glass because I want to give the impression of some slush. You can see it's very thin. And if that's a problem, again, I can sprinkle crushed glass on, or I can change the slurry that I've got mixed up right now, make it a little heavier on the glass side. The more glass you use, the more sculptable it is. In fact, as those particles start to hold on to each other, you can actually create footprints and fun little tricks like that. So here it is, all still wet. Let's add a little more right here. I'll cover the steps a little bit. And I do want to add just a touch right. In this case, I'm not going to be blowing it off, so I'm actually getting it right over my container. You can also do this over a piece of paper. Just take the piece of paper, fold it in half. That way when you finish sprinkling, all that excess material is trapped in the paper. You just fold it back up, let it slide right off into the container again. Alright, so here it is, still wet. Let's adjust the focus again so we can get a better look. And so you can see the difference even as it's still wet here. Which means it's time for me to let this dry and come back with the finish. And we're back with the finished piece. Here's the socket, here's the snow. So you can see the nice matte white section here of polyvinyl snow. That's the Woodland Scenics product that I did across the top here, where it's going to be nice and deep and stay frozen. You can see right here a section where I blended in some of the crushed glass. So it actually gets, let's find a good angle on screen there. You can actually see a little bit more luster. It's also a little bit darker. It's a little more translucent, so you can see the base through it a bit. And then, of course, really translucent, really slushy looking snow here, where it was mostly the realistic water, and I left it so that it looked like it was melting a bit as it came down here. It's a little heavy for me, some of these spots, so if this was actually going to be one of my competition pieces, I'd come back, I'd add a bit more realistic water just over the top of this, maybe sprinkle on a little bit more crushed glass. But as an effect, it certainly works. We've got combinations of nice deep pockets of snow where it's going to be nice and matte and white, and then our nice little slushy spots here. And that's it. This is a combination of polyvinyl snow, crushed glass, and realistic water. Any questions, you know where to find me. It's Justin at secretweaponminiatures.com, or find us on Facebook /secretweaponminiatures, and I'll be happy to answer your questions. If there's something you'd like to see done, let me know. We'll see what we can do. Thanks for watching.